Or up, Steve.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome to another Woods Hole Film Festival Filmmaker Chat. We are taking this opportunity during the world of the coronavirus to find ways to get our filmmakers and their work seen and heard from. And Woods Hole has arranged a whole smorgasbord of excellent combinations of people. And I've been invited to help out with leading some of these chats. My name is Steve Young. I'm a comedy writer. I've written for David Letterman and The Simpsons, and I was in a documentary. I'm not a filmmaker, but I was the subject of a documentary called Bathtubs Over Broadway, which is how Woods Hole got to hear of me, and they have very kindly invited me back to be a part of the festival and join in with some of these conversations and all that, which I have done with great pleasure. Wonderful people at Woods Hole, and obviously terrific artists and filmmakers and creators that they get in here. So today being Friday, we are one day out from the beginning of the festival. At 8 o'clock tomorrow morning, the world can go to the website and start grabbing up the tickets for all the different shorts packages as well as the features, and they've got plenty of both. I will say that I've been talking to people who are making the shorts, and it is a cornucopia of wonders and delights. And we have some of our people here today who've made some very evocative, provocative, beautiful, unsettling, varied pieces of work that we're going to chat about a little bit. You all do not know the banner that you've been all put under together by the Woods Hole team. And I'm going to tell you what that is. And it's not really going to be a shock. You will all find that we are in different ways working the same quadrant of the human experience, maybe. What they put you under was called It's Getting Dark in Here. So it's not your light comedy block. It's an examination of some of the worst human impulses, problematic behavior, terrifying, unsettling situations, and how people act and react when they are thrust into these uh, varied and threatening and awful dark situations. That said, I hope we'll have a jolly time this morning discussing what you've done and how it came to be. Uh, so I would like to begin with going around. We have 6 films, and this is a first that I've seen. Each of the 6 films is represented by at least one team member, and in a couple of cases, a good strong handful of them. So I want to say thank you to all of you for being part of this, and in some cases, getting up at ungodly hours and plopping yourself down in front of a computer. And I want to also congratulate you on your work, which I have viewed. I know you have not seen each other's work, and I hope you'll be able to, because you'll be able to see it with a professional eye and enjoy it at levels maybe even that I don't. But a terrific and powerful and sometimes weird and often beautiful batch of short films. So we're going to go around and everybody from the team can explain who they have there. And briefly, without spoilers, just a little log line or description of your film. And if you could, just a little bit about how the film originated. If it was and we've had some good stories about an inspiration from a dream that someone had, or somebody was driven crazy by loud next door neighbors in real life, and that started it. So if there's any juicy anecdotes about how your film came to be, that would be a fun little thing to hear also. So I'm just going to go down my list in no particular order, but I believe we have Brittany from well, you'll tell us. Brittany, what's your movie and how did it get going? Also, where is everybody? Are you on far-flung corners of the world right now?
Yeah. Well, my name's Brittany. My film's Broadside. I'm in Greenville, South Carolina, which is also where Broadside was shot. Broadside is a modern Southern Gothic, I guess you could say, about a pair of siblings who go on a hunting trip that goes horribly wrong, and they have to dispose of a body before they return home to their mom. So it's just like a very dysfunctional, southern, woodsy type thriller.
All right. And are you somebody who goes hunting, or do you know something about that world?
Yeah, I mean, like living in South Carolina, that kind of goes into kind of why I made Broadside as well. Living in South Carolina, like pretty much mostly everybody I know like owns a gun or partakes in hunting, like except for me, I guess you could say. So it's a world I'm very familiar with, but also very disconnected with. So that's why I kind of wanted to make this. Also, a modern Southern Gothic was something that was really appealing to me.
Excellent. Cool. Okay. Yes, there's of course more to the story that you can't really reveal without getting into
Yeah.
spoiler territory. But I hope everybody watching and all you filmmakers will get a chance to see these things, because they all, in different ways, kind of well, you're in this festival because you did some excellent work. So congratulations again. But now down, oh, I don't know if this was originally alphabetical order or what, but the Blood Bride. I believe we have Casper.
Hi there. Yeah, I'm Casper, and our film is The Blood Bride. It's a surreal revenge drama that follows a young woman being trafficked by a gang. And when she tries to escape, she gets shot and falls into this surreal world inside her subconscious. And ultimately, it's a sort of an empowering story of her trying to find her own strength and overcome her captors. I guess it's quite a surreal adventure, inspired by some of the psychedelic films from the 70s, sort of Jodorowsky, but also some of the modern stuff, like Tarzan Singh's The Fool and The Cell. It was very ambitious for a short film. So we ran into a few little problems along the way on that front, but we had a lot of fun making it. And I guess it came about, my father passed away sort of 4 or 5 years ago, and I sort of went down a bit of a rabbit hole about looking into the afterlife and the meaning of life and things like that. So it was kind of inspired about my own exploration of the philosophy of that kind of stuff. And my wife, being the dramatist, she's sort of done more sort of structured dramas on her own as a director, sort of brought in the narrative side of it. So we sort of married the surreal and the real in that way.
Well, yes, striking visuals for sure, and a story that kept me intrigued and guessing. But Casper, I'm going to ask you, where are you right now? Because
I'm in London.
oh, you're in
UK.
London. Okay, you may be in the running for the prize for a long distance zoom in. I wish we were all together in Woods Hole. This is a still behind me of the beautiful Woods Hole harbor. And I was there a year ago. And if you haven't been, I hope you'll all get to go there someday. It's a beautiful place and wonderful people, and exactly what you hope for from the film festival world. But we are doing a heroic job, the team that put this together, in making us have some version of what we love out of film festivals. So hello to London, and thanks for joining us, Casper. Now we have let's see who's American Bodies. I believe we have 2 people from American Bodies. Why don't you folks say hello, who you are, where you are, and how you got this one going?
Hi, my name's Rami. I'm the writer-director for American Bodies, and we also have Cooney, who is like below me in my grid from where I can see. We made this short film together through part of Film Independence Project Involve, which is a big diversity initiative out here in LA. And American Bodies is a story that has been following me for a long time. I started my career in journalism. It's a I would say it's a dark satire about a group of Chinese workers in an American body parts factory. It is loosely inspired by the Bodies exhibits and their total blatant corruption. And it's just sort of a dark take on what it's like to have a job that is compromising and compromises you, and also makes all of us complicit too.
So coming out of yeah, I remember those exhibits, and you've found out some stuff about them maybe that the public isn't aware of, and decided to take a darkly satirical path to talk about it. So I heard you mention LA. Are both of you in LA?
I'm in LA, and Cooney, I believe, is dialing in from Virginia, right?
Yeah. I'm actually a few minutes away from DC, but yeah, I'm
Okay.
East Coast.
All right, very good. Well, I always want to give a special thanks to anyone coming to us from the West Coast, because to me, that's too early to get up and have a coherent conversation about art or film. But thank you for jumping in from 3 hours. It's time difference on that. And all right, now going down, we got one more film with one person. I believe we have Patrick here representing, well, Patrick, why don't you tell us what your film is and how that got going?
My name is Patrick Kennelly. I'm the director, amongst many other things, of Hammurabi, which is a short film. It's playing in the Don't Look Now section. And it's about a woman, but our description gives away a little bit more than we wanted to on the website. So we've revised it. So I'm going to use my revised version. Hammurabi is a story about a woman on a mission in the desert with her beat-up Toyota Celica. Communication is hard, so she must use all the tools at her disposal to deliver an important message to a man she believes is her estranged father, the guy she has hogtied in the trunk of her car. So that's
All right. And
so this was my partner in crime, who is the writer and the star of this movie, and is my partner actually lives in, or not lives, but is in Hawaii right now with our two young kids. So it's 4 a.m. there. So unfortunately, she wasn't able to be here, even though she'd love to. And we created this together. Sort of the conception of it, and then she went and wrote it, and then we filmed it in the desert in Mojave, yeah, that's kind of it's a very sort of a personal story, particularly to the writer, and our thing always is to sort of take these more socially driven sort of ideas and put them within genre films.
well, I did notice you mentioned the Toyota Celica. I thought more than in most cases, the car almost kind of seemed like a character because it was so distinctively beat up, and whether that's a metaphor for your main character or whatever. I did notice that. I'm something of a car guy, so I appreciated some thought went into that. And yes, it's hard to talk about it without giving away that you want to have as reveals. So, well, there is a magical way to get satisfied on all this, which is to go check out the films starting tomorrow morning. And are you in LA? Did I pick that up?
Oh yeah, sorry, I'm in yes, I'm in LA. I live and work in LA.
Hawaii would have been a stretch, I think, for getting this. So.
Yeah, just about the Toyota Celica, we bought that, I think, I can't remember, for like $800, and we basically sold it back, sold it to somebody else for the same amount of money that we
put it in the next movie. Somebody else can use it. Okay. All right. Well, that's a fascinating one for sure. Litany for Mr. President. We have, I believe, a very healthy turnout from that team. If Chris, the director, wants to sort of be the team leader on this, hopefully we'll hear from everybody. But we have quite a robust grid here. So why don't we get a brief description of what that is and who we have with us and how it got going? Because that one I'm also curious about. Where did that come from?
I'm the co-writer and director of Litany for Mr. President. Yeah, it wasn't much that. More or less, like at the time, I was living with my writer, who we kind of had a weird living arrangement where he slept on the couch and he had a desk in our living room where I'd just come home and he would just be typing away every day. But one day I came home from work, I was just like dog tired. I was about to go upstairs and he just goes, "Well, what would you do if someone killed one of our cats?" I was like, I'd probably kill him. And a week later, he had a first draft of a script for me to read, and that was pretty much it. It's like the movie's just a goofy revenge story about a guy and his cat. We filmed the whole thing in Arizona, and I guess why don't the rest of my crew like introduce yourselves and tell them how I dragged you onto the project, starting with John.
Okay, my name is John Jackson. My professional name is John Durbin. I play a not insignificant role in the film. I've
Oh
known
yes,
Chris-
I think I've seen you without that shirt on. Actually, now come to think.
It's a sight to behold. I don't remember how I got dragged in or how I was involved. But I'm glad that I was. I'm talking to you now from Iowa, which is where I live. And yeah, I've known Chris for many years and always been curious about this sort of warped way that his mind works. And so when he said he was going to make a movie, I thought, and wanted me to be in it, I thought, I got to see how this works. I got to know.
Well, that's a great thing when teams and collaborators realize, I don't know where this is going to go, but I want to go somewhere with this person who I now believe in and trust. So that's why we see these groups of people who keep forming and reforming on different projects. So love to hear
Absolutely.
that. We got a couple other people. We got a composer, a DP, maybe more here.
Yeah, how about I'm just gonna go in the order of the weird screen thing, but Jay, Mr. Watley.
Okay.
I was just saying, hey, I'm Jay. I'm the composer. We met through Nick Ramirez, the together, and I've known Nick for 4 or so years now from working on another feature together, and yeah, so that's me. And I'm in New York, so I didn't have to get up at any sort of ungodly hour.
All right. Yeah, I'm solidly on board with that. Okay, very good.
How about Patrick next?
Hey, good morning, everyone. I'm Patrick Suzuki Mitchell. I'm dialing in from Charlotte, North Carolina. Chris and I met probably 5 years ago on this weird job in Las Vegas. At the time, we were both living in Los Angeles, but we connected. I watched some of his work, and I just sort of reached out to him, and I said, if you ever have a project that you need help on, like I'm down to do it. And then a couple years later, he was like, "Hey, remember that time that you said you wanted to work with me? Well, I have this script," and he sent it to me, and I was like, "Yeah, I'm in." And then we spent two weeks in Arizona in just utter madness, and it was the best. So thanks.
And then how about Mr. Derek Johnson?
Hi, good morning. Derek Johnson, based out of LA, cinematographer, Litany for Mr. President. I've been a longtime collaborator and friend with Mr. Myers, and his projects always have very talented people and very unique stories. So I'm always excited to jump on board and do my best to bring those stories to life. So it was a lot of fun, and like, what more could you ask for than making a crazy film with a bunch of awesome, talented people and friends?
Yeah, I could see that one. After certain scenes, you must have all just staggered backwards and go, "Wow, what the heck? Just did we dream that, or did that really just happen?" Yeah, so I can imagine that would be fun. We have Beckoned, and we have another healthy turnout from our film Beckoned. Who should be our team leader on this? Is it
Richard Zelniker?
There we go.
Director, producer.
Yep.
Hi guys. Thanks very much for having us. It's great. I know the reputation of Woods Hole, so we appreciate being amongst such great films and great filmmakers. And we have a healthy team here. My wife Callie wrote the script, and then David Mudge produced with me and starred in it. PJ King played the cop, and Asdru Sierra down there, he composed the music for the movie, and appreciate you all being here. So our story is about a couple that go out on the road and plan for a fun weekend away on their second anniversary, and shit happens. So stay tuned, guys. You should check it out. It's a lot of fun. We had a really great time making the movie. David and I go back. We have some history together. We did a couple of other things together, and one day we were sitting in my office, and he said, "Hey, let's do another one." And I thought, I have no idea what we're gonna do. And my wife and I were in our living room one day, and she said, "You know what? I'm gonna write it. I'm just gonna write this thing." And so we had a very small budget, and so she came up with an idea. Would you want to talk a little bit about how you came up with the idea?
Well, we knew that we wanted to do a scary film, a horror film, a scary film. But it had to be written, the script had to be written with budgetary constraints. So, knowing the way horror movies goes, that presents a lot of challenges because, you need action, you need, basically you need action peril, which all costs money. So with the budgetary constraints, and we also decided that we wanted to do a ghost story because, Richard and I both, we love ghost stories, The Conjuring, Haunting on Hill House, stories like that. And we had a location. So we had the location of the woods. We knew we wanted to do a scary movie, and we knew that we wanted to do a ghost story, and we had a certain budget. So it all came together, around that.
Yeah, and further to that point, David and I had done a movie up in the woods about 6 or 7 months earlier, and so this location was available to us. So like Kelly was saying, we tried to create a story where we could utilize the locations, an amazing location. And
very
so
evocative look to it with the whatever you did to get the lighting in certain parts of the woods and all that. Very, very good. It did not look like a low budget in that respect. So where was that shot? What part of the country was it?
It was shot in Lake Arrowhead in California.
All right. And where are you guys right now?
We're in Los Angeles, and the team's in Los Angeles. David's in Riverside, I believe, which is just.
Where do we have David? I think everybody's grid is different. But,
I'm up top on my grid, but
you wouldn't believe where they put you in my grid. It's crazy.
Yeah, yeah, it's crazy, right? But yeah, I'm in Riverside, so about an hour outside of LA.
Okay, and PJ, our actor who played the cop, where's PJ?
I'm right here. Yeah, I'm in Burbank, California.
All right, and then we had Azdru, the composer. I know I saw somebody in the grid. There we go. Way down
Burbank.
There. All right, Burbank rules. Okay, very good. So yeah, I think London is slightly more exotic than LA at this point, but from wherever you are, thank you all for coming in and saying hello and talking, and hopefully getting excited about each other's projects also. That certainly is a magical thing about film festivals. When I was on the circuit, yeah, it's great to be there with your movie, but you sit down and see something else that you could never have imagined. You go, wow, I had the experience that you want out of all this. So Woods Hole is certainly going to be one of your hot spots for the summer for doing that. Now, we've all talked about what your movie is in a nutshell, hopefully avoiding spoilers, which can be hard, but we agreed, I think, that we're all on this page of darkness. It's getting dark in here was the theme. And to some extent, some of these movies even do have flashes of humor. There's satire or a sort of dark tongue-in-cheek element to some of them, certainly not all of them. But the darkness that you've all sort of tapped into to make your stories here, I wonder if some one or two or more people from the team could talk about, is there something personally in you that is fundamentally a dark vision that's at your core? Or do you just say, well, it's one part of human experience. It doesn't define me, but I can just work in that to tell a certain kind of story. because I wonder, maybe other people do too, if you gravitate towards something that can be very grim and bleak, does that mean you're a dark person? Well, let's as you think about that, here I'll run sort of in a random order here. Hammurabi, Patrick, what would you say about that?
Well, I always feel like I'm making comedies, but that's never what anybody perceives them as at all. So I would say yes. A lot of work that I do, that we've done, is super dark. We're always trying to sort of inject some humor within that, because humor and horror are really, or at least I feel, very intertwined.
Yeah, I mean, that can be a tricky thing to get right, and sometimes the horror makes people laugh and the humor can make people groan if you don't get it right. But if you can strike that balance, so you would say that you have you understand how to work with the darker sides of human experience, but you want to leaven it with some humor, so we're not completely bleak.
Yeah, and even in the bleakness, I think there's that sort of little ray of hope in some way, that sort of thing. So that's what I'm always, in the horror genre, it's very at least the newer breed of stuff is really based on extremes, and oftentimes sort of a moral vacuum. And so we're trying to make more, or at least I'm trying to make more moral stories within the genre.
Okay, well, that seems like a good area to map out. You can go in the dark playground of horrible things, but you have some sort of sense that you have a moral purpose and some hope behind it, maybe.
Yeah.
American Bodies, Rami and Cooney, we heard from you a little bit about what that is. Would you say that you have a bleak vision, or where do you fall on that spectrum? Are you an essentially hopeful person?
I have a pretty bleak outlook, I think. I like to say that I like to put my rage on the page. So really it's in my work where it shows up. I try not to be so bleak in my day-to-day life, but I think generally the stories and the characters that I gravitate most towards are butting up against something that feels impossible, which is often dark, often absurd, also often kind of comedic, but never perceived that way. Yeah, I mean, but Cooney's worked with me. Cooney's not a dark person.
Okay.
I mean, Rami, I would say you're cautiously optimistic like I am. So, for the most part,
That's fair.
Yeah, we like to, we like to hope for the best, but usually, the shortcomings of our species kind of come into the grim light of view, I guess. So that's all I got to say about that.
All right. Well, it is a tricky area. I mean, I like this idea of rage on the page, where you can work that territory, but it doesn't have to drag you down personally 24/7 if you can manage that. Litany for Mr. President, Chris and team, what's your feeling about darkness, and whether it's part of your deep personal identity, or whether it's something you can put on as one of your parts of your wardrobe as an artist?
I mean, I don't know if I'd call myself like a dark person.
Okay.
I feel like I have a bit of an irreverent sense of humor, but I don't know. I feel like it's really interesting telling a story about trying to show the human condition, and just we all act like crazy maniacs at some point in life and do things that I think people are capable of a lot more than they think when they're pushed to a certain limit. And for the most part, it's like you see in movies where someone's taking revenge. It's everyday humans are going to do some of the most idiotic things possible. And I also don't really like movies that deal with any sort of redemption. It's like sometimes people are just bad and they don't really deserve to get a good thing in the end. But I guess if you go to the end of this movie, it kind of has like a hopeful light by the end of it. I don't know.
For you, that would be a happy ending in this movie.
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't know. What do you guys think? Do you think I'm a dark human?
Oh, let's get it all out. Okay.
John, what would you say? You think I'm a dark human?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, you are. You're a dark human, but you know, I guess that's why I'm drawn to you, because within that there's also intelligence. There's also a sense of humor. I mean, my personal philosophy is if you're not cynical, you're not paying attention. So I think that's why it's so easy for me to connect with you on a personal level and on a creative level. I never really thought of this as being particularly dark as much as I just thought of it as being hilarious and bizarre. And that's good enough for me.
There are details in it. And again, we're not going to go into all the juicy stuff here, giveaway stuff, that like small but telling things that made me think, wow, there was a vast dark vortex behind this character that we're not going to find out about really. But all right. Should anybody else from Litany want to talk about their personal darkness or the darkness of others?
Sure, Patrick here. I'll talk about Chris's darkness. No, yeah, Chris is. I sort of like want to echo the sentiments of John in that. Yeah, I think that's why I gravitated towards Chris as well, is because I've always personally liked, you know, when I was younger, I was really drawn to like Tim and Eric, which is dark and absurd and weird. And Chris has that sense of humor. I have that sense of humor. And yeah, I don't think it's a bad thing.
All right. Well, properly harnessed, but who am I to judge also whether one should be dark, light, or in between, or variable? The Blood Bride, even from the title, you might think, "Ooh, this is going to be a dark one," and it was. And we're not going to talk about the roller coaster ride of it in detail. But Casper, where would you say you fall on this scale of I'm a dark person making dark things, I'm a happy person making dark things, or something else?
I'm probably a happy person exploring dark subjects sometimes. I tend to be a bit optimistic, or try to be. I think it's a really interesting question, actually. I think, you know, Steve, what you were saying about a little bit of comedy to help, you know, channel the dark, you know, discuss a dark subject. I think that yin and yang is quite important for me. I don't think I'd ever be interested in exploring pure horror. I quite like a conduit to be able to explore those questions. And there isn't really any comedy in The Blood Bride, but we're sort of using a dark fairy tale or magical realism as that conduit. So, you know, the characters are quite archetypal, and the fact that you feel like you're in this slightly magical world allows you to kind of explore it, but it not feel like the end of the world necessarily, even though the subject can be quite heavy. But I don't know. I think it's also important to like really look into the darkness sometimes. Like, for example, this is a film about human trafficking, and we have, you know, an estimated 40 million people in being trafficked in the world today. And that, you know, so I think it's good to be able to look at it. But my personal preference is to soften it somewhat in the medium that you explore it. Another example in horror is, I know I love films like Mandy or some of Sam Raimi's stuff, where, you know, it can get nice and dark, but it's always got a rompy or an edge to it that kind of allows you to carry yourself through with it. So that's kind of where I come from with it.
Well, a friend of mine, another comedy writer, once told me, comedy writers are the most serious people. And I think a version of that thought is that comedy writers look into the abyss at the very worst of humanity and human life and manage to bring back something from it that tells that truth, but without making us despair, but finding a way to entertain us while not lying about it. So, I mean, in some ways you are all doing versions of that. We have something ugly going on, but leavened with humor, or made with a beautiful stylized presentation that makes us happy that we're watching it, even though we're nervous maybe. So, I mean, you're all kind of working versions of that, I would think. Beckoned, and here again, Beckoned, young couple on their way to celebrate an anniversary, and then there's a sort of supernatural story. Richard, Callie, and team, where would you say you fall on the spectrum of dark in person, dark on the page or on the screen, and how does that relate?
Well, everybody on the screen that's part of Beck and team will say I'm a hateful, bitter human being. So, no, I'm just half joking.
Half joking.
Half joking. Yeah, it's so most of what I do is in the dark realm. I mostly write thrillers. My last movie was dark as well. Yeah, pretty much dark is where I live. My wife will attest to that. You know, she's 21 years of having to deal with it. But and then my buddy David, you know, spent a couple of years in my studio having to deal with my cynicism and my yeah. So but I also like to, someone talked about a sense of humor in the darkness. I think if we can't laugh at that stuff, then you know, then we're in real trouble. So there's some humor to what I do as well, and I think in Beckon we had a laugh or two in there, wouldn't you guys say? We had some fun in there.
Yeah, definitely.
I'm sorry?
I said, yeah.
Fun shooting in.
Yeah, no, I mean the story. We did have some fun in the story, and I think in Beckoned itself, like Callie was mentioning, I think the ghost story, we wanted to go for sort of that 90s old horror story. I've always been very drawn to Rod Serling and the Night Gallery stuff, and so we didn't go for, you know, we didn't go for chills and thrills. We went for sort of an intelligent scare story where it was more about what was happening psychologically, and that's what I tend to be very drawn to. I'll let Callie mention some things about Beckon, and David also had a big part in making the movie, so I'll let these guys pipe in as well.
Also, Beckoned was about is about the relationship of the couple, and how they deal with individually and as a couple, how they deal with being in this, you know, very scary situation. So it's about a relationship as well, which I'm always drawn to, and Richard is too. You know, we're really drawn to characters and their relationships to each other, and how they deal with situations.
Yeah, David, why don't you pipe in?
Yeah. So, well, as for Richard, he's definitely one of the darkest people I've ever known or worked with. And it's funny because I'd probably say I'm like the complete opposite. I'm not a dark person at all. And so I think working together is kind of a good yin and yang with us. And it's kind of interesting that we ended up making a scary movie because I hate scary movies, like totally. So, but I always thought, I mean, I think I have kind of maybe a darker part deep down in me. And so getting to explore that was always really interesting. And it ended up working out really well. And I'm actually a semi fan of scary movies now. So.
Yeah, well, once you've been in one, I suppose it makes you go,
yeah,
something to this. I mean,
yeah, definitely.
Well, it must have been a lot of fun. Brittany, we haven't forgotten you, and with Broadside, I would say very close to maybe no leavening touch of whimsy or humor in this one.
Yeah.
It was quite dark from stem to stern, I would say. Beautiful and gripping and compelling. But what's your thought on your own artistic vision of darkness as a part of you or not part of you?
Artistically, definitely dark, 100%.
Okay.
Yeah, no, because like almost everybody else has said, I mean, like, I think with all of these stories, like, we're trying to say something more. So being dark or, you know, having kind of like a scare or thrill, with something that's very socially important, I think it helps stick, our messages and what we're trying to say. Specifically with Broadside, living in the Southeast, very upset with I was just very mad making Broadside, like Rage in the Page. Like, I love that, what you guys said, because that's a perfect example of what I did. Just very upset with gun violence in the Southeast, but on like a more domestic level, on a very domestic level. And then yeah, but with that being said, I'm a pretty optimistic person. I just there's a lot of things socially that just really make me pretty angry. So yeah, that's me. That's Broadside.
Well, it does seem to be a very fruitful area for artists if they can figure out what really makes me upset or worried, or what is my vision down into the bottom of the well of human experience, and can I make something out of that, that whether it makes me feel better or makes an audience feel like they've seen the worst, but there's a ray of hope. And that kind of gets into my last question. And Brittany, maybe I'll start again here with you. These films all have varying degrees of a quote unquote happy ending. And some of them there's a bit of closure, or there's a, oh, rough justice was achieved in some way or another. It may not have been pretty or entirely socially acceptable, but something happened, so we feel like the ship was righted at the end, but maybe not in every film. And do you feel that that's just a choice that you make depending on the individual situation of the story, or do you feel like you have a mission to not sugarcoat things, or how do you feel about that?
Specifically with Broadside, I wanted to be like as stark as possible. Like, basically the way the film ends, like, that's it's definitely a chapter of a family. So that's just like the end of the chapter. I don't really I'm personally just like not a big fan of straight up happy endings. An optimistic ending, that's another thing, but straight up happy, personally me, not the biggest fan, but yeah.
Yeah, well, I don't know if we got straight up happy in any of these movies. We got maybe we're through the worst of it in a couple of the movies, but not in certain, not all of these films. Casper, where do you feel like you come down on the? Do you have a duty to be optimistic, or do you just feel like, well, it just depends on what the story is, and I got to be true to that vision? Or how much do you say what the audience will want out of it?
Well, I have to say, I always get a little bit frustrated with all the happy endings in Hollywood. And quite often I'm sitting in the cinema going, just end now. It would be so much more interesting. But that said, like, I think it does depend on the story. Like with The Blood Bride, I don't think it's giving too much away if you're in a fairy tale to say that we have some form of positive closure. But for us, that was really important because it's, you know, this story, the human trafficking story is about empowering. We wanted to empower the victim. You know, otherwise it would have just been so bleak. And so that sort of made sense within the kind of fairy tale structure that we were going for. However, I would be totally up for just killing everyone off in another film, depending on the story.
All right, well, we'll see you next year. American Bodies, the ending on that one, again, we're not giving things away, but I would not say there's a happy ending. And was it just that's entirely what this particular story deserved, or what the only way that it would satisfy you? Can you imagine making a film that's serious but would have a happy ending?
For this story, no, because this story is very much about complicity. And so I think there's no way to end a story about complicity without the main character, and even I'm hoping the audience feeling sort of complicit in that last moment without giving too much away. If anything, there might be like a reveal of some bigger truth, or a reveal of something that maybe we weren't thinking about during the actual movie that is affecting these characters' lives. But yeah, no, not a happy ending, and I can't imagine a situation in which it would. But you know, nothing I write does. So that's pretty par for the course.
Aiming for the happy ending of films making a dent in the conversation out in the world and being a nudge in the right direction. I guess that would be a happy ending you could aspire to with this sort of movie. And yes, it might feel like it rings false to make and then everything was fine in the last 30 seconds. That doesn't seem to fit here. But Hammurabi, an interesting case of, well, did something happen at the end that makes us feel like things have worked out well, or have things just been made worse? And how does that fit on the spectrum of what we want or deserve out of a dark movie? Patrick, are you there?
Sorry, I was muted.
Hey,
I love that expression you had, rough justice.
Mm-hmm.
I thought that was great. And I think on some level that definitely applies to our movie. I would say that for the characters and the situation that they end up in at the end of all the stuff that I've done is very happy, very ecstatic. But for the audience, it's not. It's more scary or questionable or confusing. You know, the characters have resolved their situation. Of course, the situations they've been in have been seriously psychologically messed up. So, that's kind of where we lie, or where at least this film in particular lies on that spectrum. I think in that moment for the character is very ecstatic, you know, but then, you know, what's after that? And so
yeah, that thing that you do in the moment that makes you feel like, fantastic, I finally did it. And then, well, now you've got however many decades of your life left, hopefully.
Right.
How did I get to that point? Yeah, so I mean, that's a tough one, and it does seem to sort of ride that line of, oh good versus oh no. So very interesting territory. Litany for Mr. President. I think, Chris, you may have said that for you, this is a happy ending story, and that's about as happy as you would want to get in one of these things.
Yeah, I mean, it's like it's definitely kind of a light at the end of the tunnel, but it's weird because originally scripted and how I was intending the scene to go was completely different, and probably, I don't know if I would say darker, but more ambiguous, with less of a kind of a shining hope at the end. And the only reason I have that is because of an actor. And it's one thing I really like about filmmaking is sometimes your actors make choices that completely change the direction of the film. And I kind of let this guy play, and it's arguably the best part of the film, and it completely changed how the movie was going to end.
Mm-hmm. So you could have imagined a way that this did not even have the light at the end of the tunnel, and you would have been okay with that, but you felt like, wow, this actor kind of showed me something that I hadn't seen and seemed valid. So that again, the dream team, when they get together and they're better than the sum of their parts, that's a magical thing when that comes together. And we're going to be finishing up in just a moment because time, as always, flies by, but beckoned. It's a quote unquote, I wouldn't say happy ending. I would say actually not a happy ending. And yet it felt like it wouldn't be wrong to say there was closure and something had been sort of settled and now move on. But Richard, Callie, would you say, oh yeah, it's for us, it's a happy ending, considering that you say you're a very dark person?
No, it's not a happy ending at all, but I think it's hopeful in that, to use your phrase, there is some closure. but I have to also offer that there's a sequel in there. You know what? I mean, or
a prequel.
Or a prequel.
Right.
Think about that, Steve. You've seen the movie.
Yeah, well, this is a thing I would, if we had another half hour, I would have gone around, and I'm fascinated by, especially in a short film, when you're saying I don't have time for 90 minutes worth of backstory and everything explained. You make a lot of choices about what to leave ambiguous, what to leave unexplained, what
Right.
on one end of the story or the other are we going to dispense with in order to have this very discrete piece worked on. And that is something that the short filmmakers, I think, have as a particular area that they work on and show their strength in. But unfortunately, we are approaching the top of the hour, and I know everybody else has lives to get on with. And I want to thank you all for this wonderful delving into darkness, which was surprisingly, well, maybe not surprisingly fun. You're all accomplished, articulate people with a lot of stuff to say, both in person and on the screen. And I love hearing what people say about what they've done. And of course, the films stand on their own, but it's always wonderful to hear the backstories and the philosophies and all that. So again, the film festival, Woods Hole, goes live at, I believe, 8 a.m. Eastern tomorrow, and that's when the stampede will begin, and people will be snatching up the tickets to these the wide array of features, but also a quite wonderful selection of short programs. And you've been programmed into not all the same one. I think the grouping here today does not correspond to what's out in the festival, but I'm sure any of these groupings you could find, there's going to be a profusion of gems in them. And I encourage you all to check out each other's work and everything else that you can. And thank you for taking the time, and good luck. And maybe we'll see each other in person someday in beautiful Woods Hole.
Thank you, Steve.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Best of luck, and congratulations on work that certainly sparks some good conversation. And hope to see you again. Well, maybe next year. Who knows? We'll